What's up, bootcampers? Welcome to today's presentation on how to obtain the strongest reference letters with DAT Bootcamp. My name is Alex. I'll be your host for today. Let's get right into it. Firstly, what is a reference letter? Well, a reference letter supports your decision to pursue dentistry. It speaks to your abilities, your traits, your qualities. It's also known as a letter of reference, a letter of evaluation, or a letter of recommendation. All of these terms are used interchangeably. So why do you need reference letters in the first place? Well, they are required by all dental school programs. It's another piece of information about you from someone else's perspective. And if you have those strong reference letters, they strengthen your application. Now, the reason I say this is because if you acquire neutral reference letters, that may show AdComs that you don't really have the necessary interpersonal skills to form relationships with your patients. And so that could actually hinder your application. Remember, there are different reference letter requirements between schools. And so it's important to reference that information. You can find that either on the AdSAS portal, on the school's website, or you can call the school directly and ask them what sort of reference letter requirements they have. Remember, to cover the bases at most schools, you're looking at the following framework. You want to have 2 letters from science professors, a letter from a non-science professor, and a letter from a dentist. Moving on, so how do you obtain those strong reference letters, right? I keep emphasizing the word strong. So what you want to do is you want to interact with those individuals on a regular basis. Those individuals being the professor or the dentist that you're trying to acquire the letter from. You want to engage in their material, and you do this by asking critical questions. This way you demonstrate an interest in their field. This will also allow them to get to know you because the two of you are now building a dialogue. And that way you can build a relationship. Also, ideally you want to receive a good grade. If you're getting that reference letter from a professor, ideally an A or an A+. Obviously, if you have different circumstances, a B or a B+ will suffice. So how do you stand out? Well, there are several tips that I can give you. Firstly, maybe you want to think about sitting in the front of the class. That way you can engage with their material. You want to ask questions at the end of class. And also, when you do ask questions, ensure that you're asking those critical questions, those good questions. Those questions where the two of you can build a dialogue. Maybe you want to think about participating on the course website. A lot of courses these days have forums. And a lot of people, they ask questions on those forums. And if you can be the first person to answer everyone's questions on the forums, you can stand out in that professor's eyes. Maybe you want to think about becoming a class representative. Maybe you want to think about showing up to office hours every few weeks. There's no need to go every single week or multiple times a week. You can just go every few weeks to verify a few concepts and talk with your professor. Maybe you want to think about asking some questions via email. So maybe one week you can go into office hours, and then next week you're going to be asking them a question via email. Maybe you want to send them some interesting articles that pertain to the class material. Also, you want to ask them about their research. Some of your professors may be teaching general chemistry, but they're doing some groundbreaking research in, say, climate change. And so that's something that they're obviously very passionate about. They're doing research in that area. So then maybe that could be your in. And from there, if you've done all these things, you want to set up an appointment. Let me show you how to do that. So there's generally 2 ways that you can go about this. You can either send them an email, which is what I like to do, or you can go in person and ask them. And so when you send them an email, you can say something along the lines of, "Dear Dr. X, this is Alex from your Physics 101 course. I was hoping to meet up with you sometime next week to discuss my future plans. Are you available on, say, Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday at 1 p.m.? Best regards, Alex." And so if you followed the tips from the previous slides, this sort of framework gets the job done. So when you get to that appointment, you want to shake their hand. How are you doing? Have some small talk, right? And then you want to let them know that you're applying to dental school if you haven't already. And when you do ask for those reference letters, you want to ensure that you're asking for that strong reference letter. Would you be willing to write me a strong reference letter? You want to use that keyword strong. And from there, you want to ensure that you have your grade report, your curriculum vitae, and your personal statement ready. Obviously, if your personal statement isn't written at this point, that's okay. Just have your grade report and your curriculum vitae. Now, I know your question is, Alex, what in the world is a curriculum vitae? I have no clue what this is. A curriculum vitae is essentially your resume. It has all of your experiences that you're probably going to be putting on the AdSAS portal. This way, it gives a professor a little bit more background information about you, and they can include some of that information in their letter if they wish to. Also, you want to mention a deadline, ideally 1 to 2 weeks prior to your submission date. So for example, if you're planning to submit your letter on June 5th, roughly at the end of May, you want to follow up with them if they haven't already uploaded the letter and ask them how it's going. Should they have forgotten, you still have that little bit of buffer period, or they have a little bit of buffer period to write that letter, and that way there won't be any delays on your end. So after the appointment, you're going to go home and you're going to fill out their information on the AdSAS portal. You're going to fill out like their name, their email address, stuff like that. And then AdSAS is going to provide you with an instruction document for the letter writer. And so then you're going to send them a follow-up email. And that follow-up email is going to contain the instruction document from MATSAS, the curriculum vitae, the grade report, and the personal statement. Now from here, this is everything that you need to do that pertains to a reference letter. From there, they're going to be uploading that to AdSAS, and you don't have to do anything else on your end. Also, you want to thank them for writing the reference letter and remind them of the deadline. So let's say some of you are struggling to get reference letters and you only have 2 reference letters and you need a third. What are some of the other options that you can do? Well, firstly, I could tell you, look, you got to take responsibility for what you have done. You got to work with what you have and try to make it happen. So some things that you can do is connect with your past professors and explain your situations. And when you do explain your situation, ask them to meet with you. Ask them to go for a cup of coffee. Ask them to meet them in their office. That way, it sort of allows them to get to know you. And so maybe they won't be giving you the strongest reference letter. They'll still give you a strong reference letter. And that's much better than getting a neutral one. So these are just a few tips to keep in mind. Obviously, there's other ways to go about things. I also want to talk to you guys a little bit about Interfolio, because I see this come up from time to time on forums, and students tend to not understand what this is. So Interfolio is essentially an external database that stores letters of reference. Letter writers would essentially upload letters directly to Interfolio as opposed to directly to AdSAS. From there, you have this external database that stores your letters, and you request these letters to be sent directly to AdSAS. The benefit of this is that you sort of have access to these letters anytime you want in the future. There's a subscription fee with Interfolio. It's $48 a year. And when you do get those letters, ensure that confidentiality is checked. You have to waive your right to view the letters. Otherwise, they become void. A few other things that maybe you want to keep in mind is understand that professors enjoy helping their students succeed. It's part of their job. It's essentially as if you were to go to a mechanic and ask them to fix your car. It's part of their job. And so don't be afraid to ask your professors for help or ask them for reference letters. And something that I like to say is like the icing on the cake is essentially think about who your reference letter writer is. If you can get access to, say, the chairman or the dean or the president at your university, that reference letter is going to carry a lot more weight than, say, an assistant professor or an assistant lecturer. That's something that you want to keep in mind should you have that option. So a quick summary of what we talked about today. So firstly, our goal is to get those strong reference letters. We want to meet the requirements of each program, and we do this by either referencing the AdSAS portal or calling the school directly or visiting their website. We want to build a relationship with our letter writers so we get those strong letters. And when we do ask for those letters, we're still using that keyword strong. Also remember to give your letter writer plenty of time, 1 to 2 months ideally, and you want to set that deadline. And that deadline is going to be 1 to 2 weeks prior to your submission date. You also want to thank them for their time. Give them a gift card to a coffee shop. Write a handwritten thank you note. Your professionalism is going to go a long way in life. And also update them on your progress. Your professors were part of your success, and so let them know when you get into a dental school. They were there to help, and they want to see what the end result was. So thank you from all of us here at DAT Bootcamp for listening to this presentation. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to us on YouTube. We've got a ton of great content coming your way, guys, to ensure that you guys have an absolutely amazing application cycle. Thanks again.